A research team is sent to the Jurassic Park Site B island to study the dinosaurs there, while another team approaches with a different agenda. This is my review of The Lost World Jurassic Park. I'm still doing my reviews for the Jurassic Park trilogy before Jurassic World comes out in June, and I rewatched the Jurassic Park trilogy a few months ago, and I think I said this in my first review in the first Jurassic Park movie, that I loved Jurassic Park when I was growing up. Like, I rewatched it a lot, and I still love it to this day. Also, when I was a kid, I loved the Lost World Jurassic Park, but after rewatching the movie, I thought that the movie was above average. The good points. What came from the previous movie to the second movie that were the best aspects of this movie would have to be most of the directing by Steven Spielberg, the score by John Williams. I think John Williams did the score for The Lost World. What else? The visual effects, the special effects, and animatronics of the movie. Because the directing by Steven Spielberg was good, the score of the movie wasn't as memorable as the first Jurassic Park, but it was still good. And the visual effects, the special effects, and animatronics brought the dinosaurs to life like the last movie did. And I thought the two scenes that used the dinosaurs well in this movie would be either when the two T-Rexes were attacking the convoy, or when the Velociraptors were introduced into the movie. And other than that, there's nothing much else to talk about with the directing or the score of this movie. I just thought that those two were good, like I said a little bit earlier. The second best thing that this movie had to offer would be its concept. Now, even though I thought the concept wasn't executed well in this movie, I still liked the idea of what this movie had to offer. And I don't want to get into the whole story about what the movie is, because if I do, it'll sort of spoil what the movie's about. Other than that, the only other good points I found about this movie would be the sound design of the movie, which even further made the dinosaurs more realistic, and some of the acting and cinematography, and some of the editing that the movie had. The bad points. So the main problem that I had with this movie would most likely be the writing, and I'll get to specific points later on in the spoiler section, but I just thought that there was some story development, some character development, and some dialogue that just either didn't make sense or was like, oh my god, what were the writers thinking when they were writing that down? I mean, it wasn't the most terrible writing ever, but I still thought that the writers could have worked on it. That was the main problem that I have with the movie, but there were three other smaller aspects that I didn't like about this movie. And the three other smaller aspects that I didn't like about this movie would have to be the acting, well, not like all the acting, some of the cinematography as well, and some of the editing as well. Because during the movie, there was some acting in this movie that I didn't found to be real, and it seems like some of the cast members were overacting or underacting at some moments. There were some camera shots that I really didn't understand why they were set up like that, because it seemed weird and it didn't really flow with, like, the scene. And speaking of the flow, I thought there was some editing that hurt the pace of this movie. And that's it for the bad points. So on to my rating. My rating for this movie is going to be a 2.25 out of 4 stars. I still think you should watch this movie, even though it's not as good as the first movie, but I still think you'll find it enjoyable. And if you're a fan of adventure movies or sci-fi or fantasy movies, then I still think you'll enjoy it if you've seen the first movie. Okay, spoilers for The Lost World Jurassic Park. If you haven't seen this movie yet, and you still want to see it, then get out of here now, because I'm going to be talking about the writing, therefore I'm going to be talking about the story of this movie, and the dialogue, and the character and story development. So, if you want to know, like, nothing about the story, or about the character development, or about the dialogue, then get out of here now, please. So there are many things and moments in this movie that I didn't understand, and because of that I'm going to highlight the things that stood out to me the most. So I guess the one thing that I didn't really understand about the movie was, did everyone think that Ian Malcolm was crazy? Because we found out in the beginning of the movie that he tried to tell the world about Jurassic Park, but it seems like no one believed him. And then this gets into my next question as to where is Dr. Grant or where is Dr. Saller? Why didn't they stand up with Ian? And I know it's because they were under an agreement to not say anything about Jurassic Park, but still you would think that it would warn people like not to go to the islands. Because in the beginning of the movie, we find out that there's people that go to the island that never knew that there were dinosaurs on there in the first place. And I also felt that the movie felt naked because Dr. Grant or Dr. Sattler weren't in the movie at all. So another thing that I didn't like about the writing was when they took in the baby or the infant T-Rex. And I understand that they took in the T-Rex to like help it and to heal the infant T-Rex, but it's like, guys, you shouldn't really be doing this because the parent T-Rexes, they're gonna come and think that you took the baby and they're gonna get mad and try to eat you. And even one of the characters, I think it was the teenager. Like, she was like, yeah, I don't think this is a good idea. Then later on in the movie, when the T-Rex comes to the camp of, like, where all the people are sleeping, and when everyone's running away from T-Rex, and when that one guy, the one hunter, aims his shotgun or his elephant gun at the T-Rex, and when he pulls the trigger, nothing happens, and when he like sees to like what's going on, he finds like batteries in his in the barrels. And we find out later that the character played by Vince Vaughn like took the bullets like out of the shotgun. And I was like, really? You took the bullets out of the gun that was supposed to protect him from the dinosaurs? I mean, yeah, sure, he was hunting for the T-Rex, but like, what if he had to defend himself from like any other dinosaur? How would you feel if someone took your bullets away from your gun if you had one? The next thing that I didn't like about the writing is a really small nitpicky thing, but I'll just say it anyway. So, some of the characters are in this like small cavern or something, and the T-Rex tries to like fit in through the opening of this cavern and try to eat them, but his head is too big and he like barely gets them. Like the T-Rex is maybe like 2 feet away from getting the characters. And then the dinosaur expert character like sees the snake going into his clothes and he's like, oh, snake, and he like sort of like wobbles towards the T-Rex and like, guy, what are you doing? I mean, sure, I'd be freaked out too if I saw a snake going into my clothing, but at the same time, it's like there's a dinosaur right in front of you, like a carnivore, a T-Rex trying to eat you. I would just try to like jiggle my clothes so that a snake would fall out. And then later on, the raptors attacked the group, and the one thing that I did not understand why Steven Spielberg had in this movie was that one gymnastics kick scene. We find out early on that the teenage daughter is in a gymnastics group at high school or something. And when it's mentioned for the first time, it's like, okay, like, I don't know how this pertains to the story later on. And this is how it pertains to it, because the teenage daughter is on this, like, bar, like, high up in the building, and then, like, she does, like, gymnastic moves and does, like, some sort of, like, drop kick into the raptor, and the raptor falls through, like, this, like, grate on the side of the building, like, on the second story, and falls onto, like, spikes on the ground that are outside. And back then, when I was a kid, I always thought that was a cool scene. But now when I think about it, it's like, yeah, that's not good. And I still wonder why Steven Spielberg thought that was a good idea to put in the movie. And the last thing I'll say that was bad about the writing would have to be the San Diego section of the movie, which is about the last 15 or 20 minutes of the movie. And this part of the movie could have worked, but I think the problem that this part of the movie had was the amount of time that it had. Because with the amount of time that this part of the movie had, it just felt like it was paced really quick. And this goes back to one of the small problems I have with the movie was with some of the pacing. But like I said, if that part of the movie was a little bit longer, or if it was paced better, then maybe I would have liked it today. But after looking at it again, I was like, nah, I don't really like that part of the movie. So that was my review for The Lost World Jurassic Park. Hope you guys liked it, and other than that, guys, that's it.